The bullies misbehaved with the teacher, but her spinning kick knocked the sense out of everyone. More stories like this. Subscribe our channel. It was just another ordinary Monday at Jefferson High School. Students dragging their feet through the hallways, the sound of lockers slamming shut, sneakers squeaking on the linoleum floors. Nothing seemed different. But that's when she walked in. Miss Carter. Young, calm, dressed in a sharp black blazer and slacks, her hair neatly tied. Back in a bun, she didn't say much, just walked with quiet confidence, holding a stack of files and a thermos of black coffee. No one paid her much attention at first. Another new face in a school that had seen dozens come and go. Substitute teachers didn't last long, here especially not in room 212. Room 212 was known for one thing: chaos. A group of seniors had claimed it is their territory. The kind of boys who wore their arrogance like armor-load, sarcastic, and absolutely convinced the world revolved around them. As Miss Carter entered the classroom for the first time, their eyes flicked up with mild interest, then rolled back in boredom. Another newbie, another one to break. She introduced herself calmly, writing Miss Carter on the board in perfect block letters. She didn't raise her voice, didn't try to impress, just gave a soft smile and handed out the syllabus. But the whispers had already started. In the back row, Marcus, the self-declared ringleader, elbowed his buddy and muttered, under his breath, "Let's see how long she lasts." The boy snickered, already tossing crumpled papers toward the trash can, purposefully missing just to see if she'd react. Miss Carter noticed. Of course, she saw everything. The flicker of challenge in their eyes, the careless disrespect in their posture, but she didn't flinch. She moved through the classroom like a seasoned pro, asking questions, encouraging answers even when they tried to ignore her. She smiled through their silence, through the eye rolls, the mock yawns. What they didn't know, what no one in that building knew, is that Miss Carter had spent 10 years mastering martial arts, not just taking weekend classes for fun, but training competitively. She was a former national champion in Taekwondo, had traveled overseas to compete, and had trained with some of the fiercest fighters in the country. Her calm demeanor wasn't weakness. It was control. She had seen bullies before. She had faced opponents who tried to break her spirit, both in the ring and out of it. These boys? They were loud, sure, but they were amateurs. And although they laughed now, their smirks would vanish soon. Because Miss Carter wasn't here to be walked over. She was here to teach not just math and history, but discipline. And by the time the week ended, those boys would remember her name, not with laughter, but with respect. They had no idea what was coming. By the time Friday arrived, the whispers about Miss Carter had already started making their way through the halls. Some students said she was strict, others said she was too calm to care. But one thing was certain: room 212 hadn't changed. Marcus and his crew were still testing her limits, pushing boundaries, daring her to snap. But Miss Carter never raised her voice, never lost control. It was almost as if she was waiting, observing. Gym class came around, and the atmosphere shifted. The students filed into the gymnasium. The air filled with the echo of bouncing basketballs, squeaking shoes, and the low hum of conversation. Miss Carter was subbing in for Coach Bell, who had called in sick. Wearing athletic gear and a whistle around her neck, she looked every bit the part of a pay instructor. Calm, composed, and unfazed by the energy around her, she directed the students to line up for warm dash-ups. She moved between the rows of students, adjusting their posture, gently correcting stances, demonstrating a series of stretches on the padded floor. Her movements were fluid, almost graceful, controlled, and precise, like someone who knew exactly how her body worked. But Marcus wasn't paying attention to stretches. He stood at the back with two of his friends, laughing, whispering crude jokes, nudging each other while staring at Miss Carter. Then, without warning, he made his move. As she turned to assist another student near the front, Marcus stepped forward, confident. Arrogant hand with a smirk on his face, he slapped her. Behind. The sound echoed in the gym, a sharp, sudden smack that seemed to freeze time itself. The moment stretched painfully long. The bounce of basketballs stopped. The buzz of conversation dropped to nothing. For a second, there was silence, pure, deafening silence, The girls gasped, some with hands over their mouths. Even Marcus's own friends looked shocked. One of them took an involuntary step back, as if afraid of what might happen next. But Marcus stood there, grinning like a fool, arms crossed, waiting for her to yell or panic or storm out of the room like every substitute teacher before her. "What?" he said, laughing. "She ain't gonna do anything." He thought it was funny, a joke, a show of power in front of an audience. But what Marcus didn't realize, what no one in that gym understood at that moment, was that this wasn't just teasing anymore. This was disrespect. A line had been crossed. Miss Carter was not someone who allowed that line to be crossed without consequences. She didn't shout. She didn't scream. She simply turned her head, slowly, and locked eyes. With him, there was no panic in her face, no fear, just something calm and cold, a storm in still water. And that's when everything began to change. Marcus had just made the biggest mistake of his life, and the entire gym was about to witness it. The tension in the gym was thick, heavy like a storm about to break. Miss Carter stood still for just a moment, her eyes locked onto Marcus. Entire class held its breath. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't angry, not in the way most teachers would be. No raised voice, no panic. Instead, she moved with the eerie calm of someone who had faced far worse. Her eyes narrowed just slightly as she stepped forward, not with aggression, but with absolute certainty. "You just crossed the line," she said softly, but every syllable landed like thunder. Marcus smirked, still thinking it was a game. He opened his mouth to throw another joke, but never got the chance, in one fluid motion. Faster than anyone could track, Miss Carter spun. Her body pivoted on her front foot with surgical precision, and then, wow, a spinning roundhouse kick exploded from her hips, her leg slicing through the air like a blade. The sole of her shoe connected squarely with Marcus's chest, launching him backward off his feet. The sound of impact echoed through the gym thick. Final and stunning, Marcus hit the mat hard, rolling once before coming to a stop, coughing and groaning, clutching his side. The silence that followed was deafening. Then chaos erupted. Students screamed. Some backed away. Others pulled out their phones, recording what they had just witnessed. Jaws dropped. A few stared at Miss Carter like she had just transformed into a superhero. "Guess in their eyes," she had. One stunned voice cut through the noise. "Did you see that?" A student cried out. "I got it on video," another one yelled. Miss Carter didn't move. She stood perfectly still, shoulders squared, breathing steady, as if this was just another stretch in her warm-up routine. She slowly turned back to the rest of the class. No apology, no explanation, just one firm statement, spoken with calm clarity. "Next time," she said, "show some respect." No one said a word after that. Even the loudest kids in the room stood straight, eyes wide, unsure whether to clap, run, or apologize for existing. Marcus remained on the ground, groaning in disbelief, his ego shattered more than anything else. And Miss Carter, she simply walked to the whistle hanging around her neck, gave it a short, sharp blow, and said, "Back to stretches." And just like that, the lesson continued, but no one in that gym would ever forget what they saw. The school buzzed with chaos in the hours that followed. Teachers whispered behind closed doors. Students gathered in clusters, eyes glued to their phones. By lunch, the video had already hit social media. By evening, it had gone viral, shared, reposted, stitched with reactions, and captioned with awe. The footage showed it all: the disrespect, the silence, the spinning kick, and the aftermath. Miss Carter's name trended before the final bell even rang. At first, there was confusion. Was she in trouble? Would she be fired? But when the principal reviewed the footage, the answer was clear. Marcus had crossed a line, and Miss Carter hadn't attacked in anger. She had responded with discipline, precision, and self-control. No excessive force, no rage. Just calm, measured defense. And then came the discovery that changed everything. Miss Carter wasn't just a substitute teacher, filling in until the district hired someone full-time. She was a decorated Taekwondo black belt, a licensed self-defense instructor, and a woman who had trained in martial arts since she was 12. She had worked with law enforcement, taught women's safety seminars, quietly carried more skill than anyone in that school could have guessed. Her resume, once ignored, was now being passed around like legend. The next morning, the atmosphere in room 212 was completely different. Chairs were in perfect rows. Notebooks were open before the bell rang. Phones were tucked away. Boys who used to rule the back row, silent, focused, sitting up straight with eyes forward. No more laughter, no more paper balls, no more games. When Miss Carter walked in, she didn't have to say a word. Her presence alone commanded the room. There was no fear, just a powerful new understanding. She wasn't someone to mess with. She wasn't someone to test. She was someone to respect. In the middle of class, one of the boys leaned over to whisper to his friend, much quieter than before. Double quotes. Yeah, ... Don't mess with Miss Carter, he muttered. The room stayed quiet, but those words echoed, not out of fear but out of earned admiration. From that day on, Miss Carter didn't have to demand respect. She didn't have to threaten detention, raise her voice, or send anyone to the office. She had shown what real discipline looked like. Not just with a kick butt, with the grace and power behind it. Respect wasn't demanded. It was earned.